Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Bussey. I'm the Key Relationship Manager here with Omnia, and we are so excited that you joined us for our last Lunch and Learn webinar of the year, What Behavioral Insight Can Really Do for You. Just a couple of quick housekeeping. If at the top of your screen, there is an icon of a person with their hand raised. Go ahead and raise your hand if you can hear me. Let me know that we've got audio going. Also, thank you very much. I'll let you know if you ever agree or disagree with something I say, go ahead and click it. If you need me to speak a little louder or speak a little softer, let me know. If you need me to speed up or slow down, let me, as well. And then laughter and applause is always appreciated. Even though this is a webinar, we are going to have some interactive questions and polls. Hopefully, everyone will participate. This webinar is being recorded. So if you have any questions, you want to share it, follow us on our social media if you don't already. LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. You'll receive those notifications, as well as some really great information and access to some of our articles. So let's start off. Interview day. Perfect person walks in. They look the part. They sound like the part. They act the part. So we kind of do, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. But then this is what shows up for work. Has anyone else ever been in that position? We look at that person and go, wow, that's not who I interviewed. Well, what we're going to focus on today is really understanding how that goes into it. What are we working about and looking at to really find out, to dive deeper between what is presented in that interview to find out truly who's going to show up for work consistently. If you Google how to interview well, in less than 1 minute, you'll get over 1 million hits. Everything from YouTube videos of how to shake hands, the 10 most common questions interviewers ask and how to answer them, such as, what is your greatest strength? Or even more, tell me what's your greatest weakness and how to phrase it. So we've all interviewed someone when we say, what's your greatest weakness? And they say, well, my greatest weakness is that I'm just too passionate about the job that I do. And I work too hard, so I've had people tell me that I need to slow down. Does that really sound like a weakness when we're looking for someone who's a go-getter, who's going to be assertive, who's going to be proactive? No, we're thinking, woo-hoo, this is what we want. But the problem is that what people say and act may not line up to their natural core behaviors and what's going to be successful in that role. So before we start, let's talk about what are some of those qualities do you look for in a job, in a candidate? Go ahead and type those in the box down here. Maybe you are looking for someone who's assertive, punctual, on time. Keep in mind I said that this was going to be interactive, so thank you for starting to type. I see who's out there. So Elaine says she wants someone who's detail oriented. Is it someone that we want like that high attention to detail, or maybe you're looking for a salesperson and they need to be a little bit more of that resilient to rejection? What else do you look for when you're looking for a candidate? Go ahead and type in for me, because what we tend to find is that we use those words when we're interviewing. So as an interviewer, we are giving some verbal clues to what we want for them to pick up on. So now we're at a disadvantage as well. So how they carry themselves, are they confident, friendly, absolutely assertive, good communicator, love that. Are they relational? How factual are they? We tend to say, are they going to be a good fit into our culture we've got a really fast-paced environment. Can they fit into it? And I love that. Can they multitask? And I have yet to ask someone, can you multitask? And them say, no, not really. Of course, everyone says, yes, I can multitask. But multitasking is different for everybody. Some people multitasking is, I can do 10 things at one time and woohoo, I thrive on this. For other people, if they get more than 2 things on their plate at the same time, then it becomes a struggle. Works independently. All of these are qualities that we look for, and all of these can be measured using that behavioral insight. Dive deeper into that. We're going to talk about that and really understanding what you need. Do you need that proactive, assertive person? Maybe you need that person who's going to be more of that entrepreneur, that visionary, that Shark Tank person. But do we really want that person who's going to spend their time blowing bubble gum and filing their nails? Probably not, but no one comes in that way. A lot of times they look at their interview as a first impression. We're dating. So if we can't go entirely on what they're looking at and how they act and how they answer the questions, how do we uncover those behaviors that are needed to be successful in that position in your company? What are those behaviors that are going to be the strongest under times of stress? Are they going to become so impatient or so aggressive that it's almost bullying? How do you know what behaviors best motivate and train your new employees during the onboarding process? I read a scary statistic yesterday that said that the average company loses 1 out of 6 new employees every month for the first 3 months. So that's 50% of the people. And when you think about that, that's during the onboarding. So how do we keep those people and retain them? And how do you uncover those behaviors that are needed for development? For promotion, you have someone who's working in a service role and they want to move up into sales. Or you have a great top performer and you're thinking about moving them into leadership. But you know what? Once they become that manager, their performance goes down. You're thinking about, really, they were great at their job. I thought they would be a natural to manage those other people who are doing their same job, but they're missing something. That's where Omnia comes in. We were established in 1985. We're celebrating our 30 years of business, and we are the validated behavioral-based selection and management tools. We're going to help you uncover that. We've worked with 20,000 clients worldwide, processed nearly 2 million behavioral profiles. I say that not to say, hey, toot our own horn, look at us, we're great, buy from us, which would be okay. But more to tell you, this is our level of expertise. We have worked with industries across the board for 30 years, uncovering those natural behaviors that are needed to be successful. And what we've discovered during that 30 years is that it's not about the behavior, so to speak, because really there are no good or bad natural behavioral traits. But what happens is that it tends to go, what's best suited for that position? What are those necessary innate behavioral traits that are needed to be successful as a leader, that are needed to be successful as a salesperson or in the service world? And then the other thing as well is, how do you coach that? You have some great insight to dive below the surface and understand who people are. So real quick, just taking another quick poll. True or false? It's illegal to use a behavioral assessment as a pre-employment test. And then true or false? Behavioral assessments take up too much time. And then chime in and let me know your thoughts of, are behavioral assessments too expensive? True or false? And you look at them across the board. So I see a lot of falses coming up. It's not false. Absolutely, it's false to where it says it's illegal to use a behavioral assessment. Depending on the behavioral assessment, some, like the Omnia, are quick 10-minute online assessments, while others may be 40 or 45 minutes, depending on the tool that you use. And then cost depends, once again, what are you selecting and what are you looking for? There are ranges out there from $20 a report all the way up to $200 a report. But really, what are you looking for? So just to touch base on some of those common misconceptions, as long as a behavioral assessment has been validated for use um, for selection, you can use it as part of the employment process. And once again, behavioral assessments, they say they're too expensive. Let me ask you this. What's the cost of a bad hire? Average statistic is about 2.5 times the annual salary. But when you think about if it's a revenue generating position, that cost could jump to 6 times the cost of the bad hire because you have to factor in the man hours to find a new employee. You have to factor in the cost, the recruiting costs, whether it's on job boards like Monster, word of mouth advertising, referral fees that you pay. Factor in the cost of the lost productivity and how it affects the rest of the team. We can't get anybody in who stays. So now I'm going to constantly be overworked. And there comes a point where I'm just tired. I don't want to continue to do this. Wouldn't it be better to use something to have that insight, to ask those questions to determine if they're going to be a good fit before you hire them? When I talk with our clients, this is what I tell them, to ask themselves 2 questions. If they're not a perfect fit, which, there's always some areas. 1, can I coach them? 2, do I have the time and desire to coach them? If you're going only by what they're saying, you're going to miss invaluable information to answer those questions correctly. Once again, it takes up too much time. I don't have time to do all of this. Omnia, online, 10 to 15 minutes, untimed. Some people take it very quickly. It just determines what you need. Are you looking for something that's longer? And I will tell you, it's more important to look at the validation than the length of time that it takes to take the test. And then the assessment is a pass or fail test. That is absolutely false. In fact, we don't even like to use the word test here at work because it leads to this misconception of I have to pass or fail. That automatically increases your candidate's stress level. Oh, if I don't pass this, I don't get the job. It's a tool. It's a tool to understand your candidate. So best hiring practices, we say about 25% of this hiring should be that education, work experience, skills, and potential. You find a lot of that on the resume. Do they have the necessary skills? Do they have the necessary licenses? You may want to add in there, with that, adding a cognitive assessment just to say, okay, let's see if they have that general mental aptitude as well. Background checks, we say background drugs should be about 5%. The reason for that, those are those last minute obstacles. You may have made that offer contingent that you pass the background check or contingent that you pass the drug test. If they pass, great, you get a job. If they fail, I'm sorry, you don't have that job. Now, social media and references, I want to talk about a little bit hand in hand. We used to say that references should be about 15% of the hiring process. But what we've learned over time is that as laws have changed, as litigation has increased, a lot of companies will now only say, yes, they worked here from this date to this date. Many won't even say, yes, I would hire them, or no, I wouldn't. So in the past, when you could call people up and say, were they on time? Were they dependable? What do you feel their greatest strengths are? Many companies won't even answer that question. So we recommend that you use social media as about 10% as that fact checker. And what I mean by that is you can't use anything that you find on social media as an eliminator. But I highly recommend looking at their LinkedIn profile. Is it professional? Look at their LinkedIn with their resume. Do dates, do skills correspond? Because the resume is the marketing slick. So you always put your best foot forward on your resume. With your LinkedIn, do they match? Is there something listed on LinkedIn that's not on their resume? Who's endorsing them? Is it friends and family, or is it clients and coworkers? Direct reports if you're looking at someone for a leadership. Gives you some additional information. And if you think that the candidates aren't looking at your LinkedIn page, you're very wrong. They're looking at connection points for you to bond together. Maybe it's your alumni from the same school. Maybe you have some common connection points. You've got to level that playing field. And then on the right-hand side, we have 55%. So the rest of those are great. They all need to be a factor into the hiring process. But the interview impression and the Omnia or behavioral assessments should be partnered together to really uncover what is that candidate and who is the best candidate for you. So the interview impression is going to tell you those hard, tangible things. Did they show up on time? Were they dressed appropriately? When we exchanged emails, was there written communication professional? When we were talking on the phone, were they engaged? What did they sound like on the phone? Were they professional? Did they project a friendly, upbeat mentality, or was it kind of like wah, 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 wah? But when you look at the interview impression, you have to go by what the people say, the candidate says. And a lot of times we want to go with our gut. Oh, I really like this person, so I'm going to hire them. Or we don't connect with them. With the Omnia profile or behavioral assessment, it takes those traits that you're looking for. And it says, we've never met this candidate. We're free of all bias. We're in compliance with ADA and EEOC. So we are going to uncover and really dive deeper beneath what the interview questions, what they're telling you, to find out what their natural behavioral trait are, the good and the challenges. And now you can ask those behavioral-based interview questions such as, tell me about a time that you made a mistake because you missed an important detail. You're drawing on past performances to really dive deeper to find out who they are. And once again, can I coach it? Do I want to coach it? How we determine that is through a couple of ingredients. So I love cooking and I love to watch cooking shows. And one of my favorite shows is Chopped. If you've ever seen it, go ahead and raise your hand. If you haven't, let me tell you what it is. So one, I love competition. And it is a cooking competition show. So they have 4 world-renowned chefs. Sometimes they are famous chefs who are professional. Sometimes they bring in home cooks, but they'll bring in 4 chefs. And they each, depending on the round, they're competing to win $10,000. And each round, they have to make either an appetizer, then they move into the entree, then they move into the dessert. But the twist is that each of them is given this mystery basket, and it has 4 ingredients in it. And they're all like crazy off-the-wall stuff that you would look at it and go, what in the world are they going to do with that? So it might be like caviar and black licorice and jicama and Spam. And they look at this and they go, okay, you have 20 minutes. Go. Now they can pull things in from outside the pantry, but overall they have to take those 4 ingredients and transform them into something. And sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's savory, sometimes it's spicy. But what's interesting to me is how 4 different people take the same 4 ingredients and transform them. It's the same thing of what we measure with those 4 natural behavioral traits. All of us have a communication style. We all have assertiveness. We all have a need for structure, and we all have a pace in how we adapt to change. But the measurements of each one of those really sets our natural behavioral traits. Some of us have a pinch of assertiveness. So we're going to be more cautious and risk adverse. We're going to be proactive when we feel comfortable about what those outcome is going to be. And some of us have 4 cups of assertiveness. We're that take charge, proactive, here I am, this is what we're going to do. Neither style is good or bad, But can you see how they begin to flow together in those positions that you're hiring for? So as we talk about this, think about your positions and how the different levels of each one of these ingredients are important. Now, just as I said on Chopped, they're allowed to bring in things from the outside, from the pantry, to help tweak and soothe some of the heat, whatever it may be. And it's the same way with the Omnia. So whereas everybody has those 4 natural behavioral traits: assertiveness, communication style, pace and adaptability, and a need for structure, you also have outside influences, things such as work experience and education level, intelligence in those hard skills. So a behavioral assessment is not going to be able to tell you, can someone turn on the computer? Can they create that Excel spreadsheet? They don't measure integrity and compassion or environmental influences. And behavioral assessments don't measure that psychological or physical disorders. They measure those well behaviors, those natural behavioral traits. And you're going to hear me say that a lot, natural. So let's think about that. In the top box, what are some of those natural traits that successful salespeople should have? And if you have salespeople on your team, go ahead and start typing them in. Maybe you are hiring and you have more of those service roles. What are some of those traits needed to be successful in a service role? Go ahead, type that in the bottom box, but the top box, we have salespeople. In the bottom, we have service. And when we talk about service, think of it this way. Anyone who is behind the scenes who's not in a revenue generating position. So maybe it's call center, customer service, maybe it's accounting. If you are in the hospitality, it's your cooks, it's your maids. It may be more of your front desk because they're there to assist, but they're not actively driving the business like your event director. So we're seeing some traits for our salespeople as they work independently. They're assertive. They can handle rejection. Absolutely. Communication styles. Sometimes they're relational. Sometimes they're not. Some of our salespeople do have to be detail oriented depending on what their job requires. Are they servicing those accounts once they brought them in? Or are they the ones that go out and hunt them? I'm bringing them in, I'm closing the deal, and someone else can service. Ethical, absolutely. Handle stressful situations. Those successful salespeople have to be willing to negotiate, to say, okay, and willing to risk the relationship for the business. For those in the service roles, absolutely competitor. In the service role, they have to have that compassion, detail orientation, interpersonal skills, that collaborative nature. For me, I think when I think of someone in a service role, they're very collaborative. What can I do to help the team reach their goal? Patience. Maybe there's a lot more processes in the service role. So I know with my 20 years of experience with business development and people management, salespeople, sometimes it was like herding cats. Bring them in. I have to tell them very clearly, these are the non-negotiables, but they're going to go outside the line and think outside the box to get what they need. Whereas my service team, they needed the black and white. Tell me what the guidelines are because I want to know what I need to do. I want to get it done accurately. I want to get it taken care of. Anybody else have anything else they want to add for either sales and or service? Now, if we look at these, we see some very different traits. What would it be like if we took a successful salesperson, that proactive, outside the box thinker, fast paced, comfortable with stressful situations, and we put them into a role where it's more service oriented? They have to be collaborative. They have to have a lot of attention to detail. There's processes. So they have to be very process oriented. Are they going to be as successful in that role? No. Or we take someone who we say you're service oriented. We want to make sure that you are sales. We want you to go out. You have to self-start. You're a commission-based environment. Go for it. It could be scary for them. And I believe that anyone can do anything for a short period of time, but our goal is, and the goal of using behavioral insight is to really determine helping you find the right person in the right position from the beginning. Avoid that stress as that manager and for us as well as that employee. So, some of the strengths of that highly assertive person, and I want you to think of this as more in the sales world. They tend to be proactive, they're assertive, they're risk takers, they're very comfortable in that commission based environment. But some of those natural challenges are they're aggressive and overbearing. Has anyone, by a show of hands, have you ever worked with a salesperson who was so aggressive that you just walked away from the deal? I know I have. And it's because I needed time to think. Also, some of those challenges may be extremely me centric. I want to reach my goal. How do I reach my goal? If I have to step over somebody to get there, I'm okay with it. Now, that's taking it a little bit to the extreme, but that could happen. How are you going to know that before you hire them? Meanwhile, think of this now in the service world. Some of their strengths are that more is more collaborative. They offer options. They're needs based. But some of their challenges is they're going to be cautious. I only want to offer those options that I feel confident are going to be accepted. They're very team oriented. So while they're goal oriented, they may not be as goal driven. I'm willing to sacrifice reaching my personal goal for the team to reach theirs. And so they could be perceived as order takers. I don't want to tell the client what they need, so I'm going to ask them, "Hello, Danita, how are you today? What can I help you with?" And so they're not being as proactive that you may want them to be that product knowledge, to be able to make those recommendations because they don't want to be rejected. They're very risk adverse. Do you think that you manage those two different types of people differently? Absolutely. And once again, it's not either good or bad, but it's knowing who they are, having that insight into those natural behaviors to understand how to coach them. So their communication style. We see two very distinct communication styles. We have that relational communicator. My husband is one of those. He can talk to anyone. In fact, we were leaving Chick-fil-A last Saturday getting lunch, and the line was extremely long. It was wrapped around the building. And as we're leaving, we're waiting to turn. Guy in line had his window down. We had our window down. He's like, "Hey, how are you doing?" My husband's like, "Great, how are you? Have a good day." We drive off. I'm like, "Do you know him?" He's like, "No." Like, really? You just had a 30-second conversation with someone you don't know in a drive-through line. But he's extremely relational. He's people oriented. He networks very easily. They build excitement. So think about your leaders. They are great motivators. They like that public speaking. What motivates that relational communicator is send a parade to the office because I did something good. Woohoo! Maybe it's that analytical communicator. And here's where we can see some big differences. The analytical communicator is factual, concise, they're active listeners, they're very comfortable with that solitary task, and they're problem solvers. So when you're interviewing someone, your relational person may just kind of talk and fake it till you make it. They tend to be more inviting in an interview. Whereas your analytical communicator is going to be more of that person who wants to process internally. So before they speak, they're going to weigh every option out and only give you the best answer. And at times that could cause them to take a step back and be, they weren't quite, they seemed a little reserved. Now, either one can do very successful in sales or service, but how they communicate, how you motivate them are going to be very different. And a lot of this, let's face it, we learn through trial and error if we're not using a behavioral assessment. Because we've got to figure out what motivates this person. Because that analytical communicator, if I'm going down the line going, "Woohoo, great job, great job, great job," and I get to them, they're thinking, yeah, tell me what I did that was so great. I want job specific feedback. And if you dare pull me up in front of everybody to speak, that's not my cup of tea. I don't want to go there. You got to understand your team. You've got to understand who you're bringing into your team to understand how to motivate them and how to get them in the right spot. So we talked about pace and adaptability. So we have those fast-paced people, our race car drivers. Thinking about it in the sales world, they love handling multiple clients in different stages. They like short-term goals. They're the people who can come in. I have a job to do and a to-do list, and my day changes, and I can switch gears immediately. In fact, I thrive on that. But some of the challenges may be overextending. Oh, I promised Sarah something. Oh, yeah, Craig's going to get something. Oh, what did I tell Elaine I would do? Oh, it'll come back to me. I'll remember in a minute. So they have to use those organizational resources, calendar reminders, customer management, contact management systems, paper and pencil to stay on that. Boredom. They're not advancing quick enough. So now I'm bored. I've been here, done it. I know it's only been 2 weeks, but I'm ready to move on. And so they lose interest quickly. Or maybe they're really assertive and they're that fast-paced person. So they set really high goals and they expect to reach them yesterday. How do you manage that when you know that the cycle to move up takes 6 to 12 months, sometimes longer? Or maybe that's you when you manage people. Are you setting unrealistic expectations on your team? The other pace is that methodical, process-oriented person. They are comfortable with the longer sales cycles, but some of their challenges is handling multiple prospects or customers at once and constant change. How you train this person is very different, especially in the beginning when you're onboarding them. They want to know all of the steps. Once I've internalized it, I can move quickly, but if you change the process, you may see my productivity decline. My recommendation is that if it's not hurting anything, it's okay to let them go. What I mean by that, prior to coming to Omnia, I worked for a bank, and there's a short amount of time that you can come in before the branch opens up for your customers, and there's a lot of things that have to be done under dual control. So I would come in, hit Control Alt Delete, see my computer start, and then boom, I'm out of here. I know it's coming up. I'll come back and sign in, check the system, and let's take care of things. We've got a short amount of time. I had a teller who would come in and naturally want to hit Control Alt Delete and watch all of the programming, that window lingo that rolls up every time. Watch it. And then sign into her program and move forward. Well, I, being the manager, thought everybody worked the same way I did, so I'm going to pull them back and forth. Well, what happened is that when I pulled her off from watching it, because it'd be like, hey, come on, we see it starting, let's go do this, she would have more outages during the day. She worked slower. She just seemed a little bit discombobulated, like there were some issues. It took me a lot of time and error to realize that if I just let her follow her process of watching that come up and do what she wanted to do, then her productivity increased. She was more efficient. Her errors were down. Did it make sense to me? Absolutely not. Did I wish it had taken me, I had a tool that I could use so I would know that in advance versus, having to learn that over 6 months of trial and error? Absolutely. Because as a leader, I wasn't a very good leader because I was trying to make her adjust to who I was instead of recognizing her strengths and her natural behaviors and maximizing those for our success. And then we have that need for structure. Are you that person that flies by the seat of your pants, big picture visionary, or are you that planner? So that big picture person, very resilient, thinks outside the box, visionary. But some of their challenges are the details. If you manage a sales team, think about it this way. Does your salesperson always turn in all of their paperwork absolutely correct 100% of the time. Or is it something like, okay, I know that this is a 6-page contract and I need 5 sets of initials and a signature on the last page. But you got 4 sets of initials and a signature. Do we really need that fifth? Does it make that big of a difference? Some of their challenges may be following those guidelines. Give me the latitude, let me go. And don't micromanage me. And what you consider just management, they may consider micromanagement. They want to follow their own rules. So with this particular person, while it's great that they can self-manage, you may have to tell them what the non-negotiable guidelines are. But then you have the planner, the complete opposite. Their strengths are they're very structured. They're going to self-manage, but they're going to self-manage within those guidelines. Tell me what the rules are, I will follow them. I'll make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. Never have I heard a salesperson who has done that. But their challenges may be that the more that they want perfection, the more that they may be sensitive to criticism and rejection. In thinking outside the box, the guidelines say, have we ever worked with someone who has said, the policy is? Well, when you're hiring them, are you thinking about who you're matching them with up for that training purposes? Or what does that role require? You have to understand the job responsibilities first, and then you can begin to match up those natural behavioral traits. So, real quick, we've talked about it, but true or false, behavioral insight can only be used during selection. And if you're wondering whether to say true or false, the next question says, name some of the ways you can use behavioral insight with training. Go ahead and type it in. Let me see what you think, because it is absolutely false. If you're only using behavioral insight, you're only using behavioral assessments like the Omnia for selection, you are reducing your return on investment. So think of some ways that you can use them. And in this box below, go ahead and type in some of the ways you can use it for training. I've given you a few already. Matching trainer to new employee. Maybe you're looking at it from other aspects. You're looking at it for succession planning or development. You have someone who is in a service position and they're trying to career path. So go ahead. I'll give you a couple of seconds. I know that we have some people typing. So absolutely, I love that, matching employee to a different position. Someone who may be successful in one role is not successful in another role. We talked about that earlier. I've got a top performer. Our natural inclination is to just automatically promote. But they're not ready to be promoted, not because they can't do the job, but they might be missing some natural strengths there. They're more of a relational communicator, and that relationship aspect outweighs their assertiveness. So they're going to struggle with my need to be liked outweighs my need to address issues. Maybe it's that whole part of with a horizontal or a lateral promotion of I am big picture and this role is going to require a high attention to detail. It's not going to be a good fit. Once again, I share this story often for those of you who are regular attenders. You may have already heard it, but I worked at a bank prior to coming to Omnia, and towards the end of my career, I did commercial lending. And I loved going out and talking with my clients, finding out what they needed, gathering their documents. What I hated was I had to come back and I had to sit down and go through 3, 4, 5 years of business and personal tax returns, calculating debt to income ratios, calculating cash flow. Did I do it? Yes. Did I do it well? Yes. Did I like it? No. And it was a contributing factor for me leaving. My natural strength was going out and talking with people and bringing them in. really working with them to find out where it needs to be. I would have much rather have handed that off to an underwriter to say cross the I's and dot the T's. So definitely when you're training, finding that right person, and then professional development. Your employees want to know that they are not a number. The easiest way that you can by offering them a development report to say, here are your strengths, here are your challenges. We are invested in you with continuous education. So you use that behavioral insight for hiring. Now use it for training. Take it from the information that you have in the reports and translate it to matching up that trainer, but also knowing who you are. So a lot of times leaders go, oh, this is great, but it's geared for my employees. No. Behavioral insight starts with you. How are you going to gauge how you're motivating and demotivating people if you're not self-aware? And using that leadership report allows you to say, oh, I'm really assertive and I'm more of that relational person and I'm really fast paced. Am I stressing my team out because I'm asking for too much in a too short of a time frame? But then also learning how to match who you are and your natural behavior, strengths and challenges. Work on your challenges, and then also how does that translate into managing your team better? Are you complete opposite on that need for structure? So for you, attention to detail is, hey, I need that report by Friday at 2 o'clock, and you're walking away, go, woohoo, I gave her a time frame. And the person's going, excuse me, how do you want that report? How many pages does it need to be? How do you want it formatted? What information do you want? How I can't do my job because you haven't given me enough information. Or maybe you're that leader who says, you know what, by the time I tell you how to do it, I can do it myself, so I'll just take care of it. And now you're overextending yourself, but what you're telling your team is, I don't trust you. And because I don't trust you, I'm just going to take care of it. And I'm not contributing to your development because I'm hoarding all of my knowledge. So know who you are first with that behavioral insight, and then use it for development. Within our Omnia profile or full report, we're going to tell you what people are motivated by and demotivated by to that position. We're also going to tell you what their strengths and challenges are, probable strengths, possible weaknesses. Wouldn't you want that information while making that hiring decision? Once again, can I coach it? Do I have the time and desire to coach it? And then once you've hired them, knowing what's in your development toolbox. What tools are you giving your employees to grow? With Omnia, we have the development tools that talks to you about that's meant to be shared. It's unscored. It says these are your strengths, these are your challenges, whether in sales or in collections or in general. And now here's an action plan. That behavioral insight will allow you as the leader to partner with your employee to find out where do they need to move forward. So we're going to have a little bit of a test here. Who wore it best? So we talked about this. And you're thinking, okay, what is this? Well, these are our 8-column Omnia graphs, and the higher the column, the stronger the traits. So the top trait is someone who's a little bit more collaborative, analytical, communicator, process-oriented with a high attention to detail. The one on the bottom is very assertive and proactive, relational, feels comfortable talking in front of people, fast-paced with resilient, big picture vision, not as attention to detail that's needed. Which one is better? Go ahead and type in the bottom where it says share any comments or questions, which one you think is better. Who do you want on your team? And as you think about that, let me share this with you. One of these represents my natural behavioral traits. The other one represents Carrie Bennett, who is our marketing specialist guru. She's the one that sends out the invitations and handles all of our marketing and event planning here. Which one is better? I can tell you right now, neither one is better. My pattern is on the bottom. I'm the assertive, feel comfortable talking in front of people, a high attention to detail, or no attention to detail, I should say. Carrie has that high attention to detail. Think about it in this context. If I asked Carrie to be the person who spoke, she wouldn't feel as comfortable. It's taking her outside of her comfort zone. It's taking her outside of where she works best, which is a little bit more behind the scenes, making sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. For me, if you asked me to create this PowerPoint presentation, I promise it wouldn't look nearly as beautiful as Carrie and Sarah, who also is in marketing, does. Because when I send them the PowerPoints, it's basically black and white. Carrie has strengths that complement me and my challenges. I have strengths that complement her challenges. Together, our Omnia team is better. When you learn about behavioral insight and what it can really do for you, that's the takeaway to look at. How can I make my team more successful and willing to stay? So what can behavioral insight really do for you? One, it helps you avoid hiring mistakes. It helps you how to identify to position those employees so you can play to their strengths. Pinpoint those individual motivators for coaching. And then identify and mitigate those differences between the manager and individual employees. In this, Akio Morita says it best. He was the co-founder of Sony. He says, when I find an employee who turns out to be wrong for a job, I feel it is my fault because I made the decision to hire him. Using behavioral insight allows you to feel comfortable in knowing that you have an additional tool in your toolbox to find that employee who's going to be that right person and the right seat on the bus before you hire him, before you promote them, before you move forward with that decision. It's a tool. Use it. So, anybody have any questions? Go ahead and type in if you have any questions or comments down below. One of the questions as you're doing that, as you're typing in, just want to let you know that you can download our PowerPoint as well. And one of the questions I'm usually asked is, really what makes Omnia different than other behavioral assessments out there? And what I like to say is, one, we're the best. No, I'm just kidding. There are a lot of great tools out there. However, we have some highly customized tools. We are adjective-based instead of course-based, and we work closely hand in hand with our clients to ensure that they have the best target that they can. And our tool can go from selection to retention to development very easily and seamlessly. Also, happy holidays. If you have never had an Omnia assessment, if you completed, maybe you are not a current client of ours and you'd like to test it out, if you can try a free assessment. Go ahead and use the promo code of that 12 webinar. You'll be allowed to experience the Omnia assessment firsthand, how easy it is to complete, and then also receive a development report back that gives you a little bit more insight into who you are. So, thank you, Elaine, and for the kind thoughts. I see that no one has any questions, so thank you for joining us. Don't forget to join us in January of 2016 on transforming your workplace culture from toxic to terrific this year. Once again, my name is Kim Bussey. On behalf of all of us here at Omnia, I want to wish you a happy holiday and a happy new year. Thank you.